Good afternoon. It's Thursday, July 30th, last Thursday of July 2026.
Uh,
Oh, welcome, welcome. This is an open door and our regular Thursday noon gathering called Finding Truth Everywhere, where we find usually anyone who wants to can recommend a video or a podcast or a YouTube to watch, and then we all watch it and we get together and talk about it. And today we are watching the one and only this wonderful teacher, Helen Hamilton, talking about the missing piece in non-duality, and it's having compassion for the mind. So people are joining us even as we are welcoming everybody. So come on in. I'm going to do a brief summary and then we can all talk about what we think about this. And I don't know about you folks, but this is something that was kind of underneath the surface for me. I recognized what she was saying, but her clarity with the explanation really did. Um, it was quite helpful for me. She says the realization was a revelation for her, and it allowed the mind to quiet down and for the love of the mind to actually present itself more fully. She said this understanding is fundamental to awakening and how we are able to live with the non-dual understanding. And so she began by telling us that there are, she says this often, there's only one being, even though there are 8 billion, human beings in form, but there's only one. And yet, as these seemingly individuated expressions called human beings, we get confused as individuals. And she said the mind was developed as a discernment mechanism that had a capacity in the illusion to help us navigate the illusion, essentially to protect the physical body. Um, and it's moved from protection of the physical body and the material world to the mental body and the psychological body. And she says that's exhibited by like, should I listen to this person or not that person? Is this person good for me? Is that person not good for me? And she said, even in the journey of awakening, we still do this because we fit awakening into a good thought category and a bad or an enlightened thought category. And she said, this is what the mind does, and it can't stop doing this. So is this an enlightened thought or is this an unenlightened thought? Am I on the path or did I fall off the path? And so she said, while the mind is a good tool, we have to, at some point, step away from it. Not to reject it because there it is, but just awakening to the stable truth that we can't really use the tool that the mind is because the mind works in duality, right? It even compares the separate self with the unlimited self. And I loved that. It compares the separate self. It will take every learning that the awakened mind has and then use it against itself through comparison. So um, she said that the mind, this separate self, doesn't have all the information and that it can't really navigate reality. It just functions by a predetermined set of conditions. And so Helen said a lot of people were telling her that they're being attacked by the mind, that it's always critical and harsh toward us. And it feels like we'll never be free of it. And it became clear to Helen that um, she said, what did she say? I'm looking for how she said this. She said, it never happens that you do that last thing and quiet the mind. It gets worse and worse and worse until she finally asked herself, what if I'm not actually at war with my mind? What if I'm just watching the mind attack itself? What if I am the unlimited infinite watching this tool just go back and forth against itself? And so she says, mind is created to do some really simple things, but now it thinks it's running the show. It was created to solve problems, but it thinks now it has to solve all of them. And presence is watching all of this, watching the mind chasing its own tail. And here was another thing she said that I thought was really insightful. She said, "Your mind thinks it's talking to you. It thinks it's talking to the unlimited infinite. And the unlimited infinite hears mind thinking that it's talking to it. But the unlimited infinite is really just watching the mind trying to talk to the unlimited infinite, but not being able to do so. So the mind is incapable of talking to the unlimited infinite. It just doesn't have the tool. And the guides would say it doesn't have the frequency. It's just not possible. And a course would say it's not at that level of reality. So I'm trying to get to the last thing here. Um, she said once she realized that the mind was just always going to be in this constant feedback loop of comparison, negativity, criticism, and that she was the infinite awareness watching the mind do this, she began to develop compassion for the mind that was at war with itself. And that softened, she said, it just softened the way that she sees the mind. And it gives love to a mind that's trying to do something that it can't do. And so she said, and I love this, she said, this was just another way to experience the real power of non-dual love, the understanding that really comes from the heart, which is a capacity to hold the mind with more understanding and compassion. And then the mind becomes more like a friend because it does the job that it was created to do, but it's not asked to do anything more. And she said, the mind will always think that it's me. Your mind thinks it's you. Um, but we have to stay in this non-dual understanding of this feedback loop, this computer program. And that's really all I'm going to say for now. She said, dissolve the rigidity of thinking that the mind is talking to you. It's just a software program. She said she invites us to fall in love with the mind, which at this point, I have to say, I find that a little difficult to do. Um, and the last thing, she said, mind can parrot back the wisdom of the big S self, but it can never create or see the wisdom itself. It just parrots it back and then says, oh, see, I am you. Oh. And she said only the ego or the mind would think it needs to be ended. And she said a lot of non-dual teachers talk about eliminating the mind, getting rid of the mind. But she says that's not necessary. It doesn't need to be ended. We are the creator of all of it. letting it arise and watching it. Because love freely says to all that arises, I love you, be you, right? I love you. Mind, be yourself. Just do what you need to do, but knowing that that is not what you are in truth. So that's it. And Rana has her hand raised. God, that took 10 minutes or less. Let's see what unfolds in this discussion. So, Rana, what did you get from all this? What have you got?
Hello, Amy. Well, you know, Helen is very clear for me, and you touched on a lot of the notes that I had written down. I'm not at war with the mind, I'm just watching it attack itself. So that was kind of a additional little thing to sit with, right? Mind attacking itself because mind thinks it's an intelligent being. And that's what she said at the end. Mind is actually a software program that thinks it's an intelligent being. So I thought that was fun. The question, she said, is mind talking to me? No, it's talking in me. And that kind of reflects on the discussion that we've had this week about everything is in me. All appearances rise from here, you know, and it's the same thing. Mind is just another appearance, it reminded me, but I take it so seriously because I was convinced for so long that it is me. But the distance that she continually encourages us to create, not a mind is bad distance, just a distance to watch it, and then to love it, which I think is a key to this whole thing. Because at the end, she said, love mind into dissolution,
She did.
So, and anything I think is a problem, like that focused attention makes it bigger. But things that I allow to just be there seem to come and go. So it would probably be the same with this. Instead of viewing mind as a problem with that kind of focused attention that it needs to be fixed or changed or, oh, I'm ashamed that thought came, right? That it just
Well,
needs to be observed.
yeah,
Go ahead.
so Rana, I want to ask you something. Um, we have been taught, and there's nothing wrong with this, and you bring this up a lot, and it's good. We ask the question, is this thought true? Right?
Right.
Who's thinking this thought? Who's the thinker of this thought? And it's actually another way of going back, stepping back even further and saying, this is the mind arguing with itself, right? We don't even have to ask, is this thought true or not true? We can actually just say, oh, the mind is having an argument with itself right now. Does that make sense to you?
It absolutely does. It neutralizes so much. It takes the sting out of any potential thought that is heard within the mind. Because she said the mind can't have an objective view of anything, right? It's totally point of view subjective, you know. What else did I write on here?
That was really good. It neutralizes the thought. That was an
Well,
excellent
she said it's
description.
just thoughts talking to thoughts. Like it has nothing to do with anything personal. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. And I also, I'm grateful to be reminded over and over again that these seeming spiritual teachers are not out there, right? That it's coming from within me, um, poking holes in the identity I think I was, just to show me who I truly am, you know? So helpful. So I just have to remind the self, it's not help because Helen's a great teacher. This is all in here, and how fabulous that it's coming through, to have that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Cindy and then Mel.
I love us. I got a story. Um, First, I really enjoyed this. It's fun listening to Helen, and one of the things that I connected it to in this most recent um, retreat with the guides from Italy. In various teachings, they equated the brain and AI pretty much being the same thing, where they're data collectors and sharers, but they're not wise. They can't feed you back anything that hasn't been installed into it. And um, this seems very similar. Like to expect that my viewpoint is wise and knows the truth of oneness when my viewpoint comes from duality is kind of ridiculous. Um, and it's interesting as I was sitting here because of um, various reference points in my life. I know it was May of 2023. I was flying back from Colorado, and I lived on the island. The only way to get on the island, by the way, is unless you have a boat or a plane, the only way on and off this island is over bridges that have tolls. They're on the highway. So it was an extended trip with lots of interesting delays, and it was a long, 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 long day. And Emma was supposed to pick me up at the airport and drive me home. Um, and Emma checked in with her boyfriend, who had never been to my house, about him doing the driving, and then she proceeded to get drunk, and that's an important part of the story. So when I got picked up at like 12:30 at night, um, I think his name was Dan, was driving, and he put into his GPS my address, and his GPS was programmed to find a route that had no tolls. And I was sitting in the back seat, and Emma was happily drunk next to Dan, and Dan started driving us home. And we got pretty close to the bridge, and the GPS kept telling him to turn left. And I attempted to speak, you know, and Emma just turned around. At this point, I feel like I'm God, right? When I'm looking at the story now, attempting to help the limited cells, but you can only provide information if it's received. Emma immediately turned around and said, "Oh, backseat driver." And I just laughed and sat back and decided to enjoy the show. Um, for about 15 or 20 minutes, they followed the GPS. The GPS could only give them what what it knew, and it was being instructed to take me home without any tolls. It was an impossible task. There was no way to get to the bridge or get to my house without paying a toll. And the GPS just literally kept them driving around this small town. And Emma's drunk. And finally, Emma said, "Turn it off." And like 4 minutes later, I was home. I mean, that's how close we were to my house. Um, but it really taught me such a beautiful lesson about the understanding, especially in relate. She even talked about GPS. You only know what if you understand that you're viewing the world through your programming, you need to at some level accept that your programming is incorrect before you allow for something larger than that to take place. And so lately I've just understood that separation, the I am separate thought has a distortion. So even though it feels super real, like following that GPS, that's what, so every time Helen said the mind, I renamed it in my space as the I separate mind. And held within this I separate mind was a whole bunch of conversation and at least from my current level of consciousness, I'm able to hold it from something larger, say, man, it feels like me, but I know it's distorted because it keeps telling me that I am not you, or that I am the result of my past, or I have to worry about my future. And there's this acceptance that the only moment that ever really exists is this one. And the more I sit in that, which feels like love, the less important this, you know, mind becomes. But I'm really grateful for when I'm conscious enough to be aware of these stories that life continually gives me. And that GPS story was the one that just lit up for me as I was listening to Helen, because it just played out so beautifully. Um, Thank you, Amy, for facilitating this. Really, really enjoyed it. And that's the final bit on my mind. How many times can we say there? There's nothing I need to fix. Love the mind into dissolution, and that's available right now. And in the channeling I was listening to this morning that we'll listen to on Monday, um, what A Course in Miracle calls the holy instant, the guides were calling, ready, William? The guides were calling the eternal now. And they literally said God only exists and only has the power to transform things in the eternal now. And that just felt so beautiful and right to me. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Mm, thank you. Good afternoon, Mel.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So good to be together. And Cindy, that was beautiful. I love your GPS story. And we have a road, it's like a gravel road. Our road ends for our residents, and then it turns into a gravel road and goes through a farm over hill and dale and fences and everything. And it kind of ends up in another estate's backyard and empties out into another road. But the GPS system doesn't realize that that's not a road. And we get like Domino's pizza people, and it wrecks your car because there's all these holes and trying to get through. They're determined to get through this road with gates coming. So it's just a perfect example of how, that software, it's really, good to kind of when you can step away and see how crazy it can be. So thank you, Cindy. That was really nice. And I don't know if some of you have seen those commercials that say, love your mind. Have ever you seen those? Okay, we have them around here. There's these commercials called Love Your Mind. And I think it's for mental people with who have depression or whatever. But it's the theme is, love your mind and pay attention. I know. So it's at the psychological level, but still it's, maybe another way of stepping back and looking at what's your thoughts are passing through. And I did really enjoy, I love listening to Helen. But I got, now Carol and I are in a book group and we're doing, Francis Lucille's Perfume of Silence. And coming up, I think we might hit it this Friday, but there was a passage here that I thought I'd share with you because I think it's saying kind of another way of saying some of what Helen was pointing to. So I just thought I'd share that with you all, if that's okay. Okay. It says, from the vantage point of the totality of this timeless presence, there is no time. Consciousness is not in time or space. All the mind can do is reduce consciousness to a point, whereas it is, in fact, the totality of which the mind with this universe is just a speck. Since the mind cannot grasp consciousness, it reduces it to nothingness and then becomes frightened of it. The timelessness of our true nature is frightening to the mind because it says, there is no room for me there. And is it true? However, it shouldn't be frightening for the mind because at the same time, one of the possible modes of existence of this extraordinary potential is whatever is going on right here, right now. There is room for the entire universe, all the galaxies, all the stars, and all the time, all the times. So there is no lack of space or time. It is just that the mind has no access to this different dimension. And that's kind of what the guys were saying, weren't they, Cindy? You know, that mind is recognized that it's limited and not a real source. So anyway, that was my little input.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just in
I love that book. That's such a good book.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
I was just going to say in response, I've heard a lot of our teachers just point to letting go of thinking, like this need, there appears to be this need to, at some point on this journey, understand that we're not the mind and that there is a pull into seeing the world through it, but it's giving us a very, like, it's the headset, right? I'm going back to Donald Hoffman and Rupert Spira's headset, Google headset, or every time Rupert talks about putting on the orange glasses. It really feels like it's the same teaching, accepting that this I separate minds, which is, I love calling it that, only shows us the experience it's been programmed to show us, and there is something beyond that is, well, it makes me very happy. I mean, there's just happiness that fills me because it literally softens everything, doesn't it?
Mm.
You know? So yeah, that's my response. I don't think it's just the guides. It really feels like it's every one of the truth teachers we've been playing with.
Mm. I love Perfume of Silence. That is just a phenomenal book. We might want to tackle that someday, although you're already doing it. So, um, lots of thoughts. John, what's on your mind?
Oh, a heavy load, a heavy load. I just love what Cindy just said about, like we all think we know, thinking we know stuff. And along comes Helen with a new nuance that I got. And so that's really what I want to share. And it's at the end, she says, I'll no longer act from fear. I will act from value. And I really like that, and also willing to see what she's, like willing to offer in return, value versus fear, and to communicate this, to yourself and to others, and saying that, that she can from her state, it's really what counts, is where I'm coming from. And, well, it's not valued, it equals loss of identity. And that's the saying. I don't value it. I don't value the ego. There's nothing there for me. So it's piece by piece, it's losing its identity, and it's really in contrast to, like Saint this week. We're talking about thoughts and so much, and what comes up. I actually emailed Cindy about what about the splits of awareness from Regina, and and I thought it was so good because she's just dealing with thoughts and the feelings, experiences, and all that. And I'm just thinking, that now I'm looking at this and seeing what Helen is saying, and it's another nuance because she's saying, "Hey, I can, when I can become my own planet again, check my own ambitions again, listening to my own thoughts again. Once I'm clear on where I'm coming from." And I thought, like it's just another nuance, but it's, like she says, I can remember my own worth and remember it and have an unshakable relationship with my own worth. This is fresh. This is fresh, and just she's seen and to develop this. So seeing myself in a self-directed life and in alignment. And I think that was so beautiful. So yeah, thinking stuff, and then along comes something like this, and Like, what about this? What about that? So it's so beautiful. And thanks very much for sending me that out and having me watch that earlier on. And thanks for being here, everybody, on Thursday afternoon.
Thank you, John. You know, the whole explanation that I've heard Francis talk about is the mind is like the thorn that uses itself to pluck itself out. And so the thorn removes the thorn. And what this piece that Helen shared did for me is it really allowed me a little bit more clarity on the thorn, because we do use the mind all the time. We use it unconsciously, and we use the mind to read, to discern letters on a page and understand what they mean. And yet we miss, because it's so close, the fact that mind itself is really just arising in consciousness. And it's so close. And consciousness itself is so transparent. And mind is so full of detail. And as John just said, emotions and thoughts and feelings. And they're so powerful and so colorful and so energetic that we tend to get lost in them. And mind, as we open up the toolbox and we take out the most used tool in the toolbox, and we think that that tool is the toolbox itself. It's very, very easy. Several times this week, since watching this video, I have stopped and watched the mind argue with itself. And just thought, oh gosh, thank you, Helen. It immediately, as Rana described it, it neutralizes it. It unties the thought, because the mind will get wrapped in a Gordian thought, a Gordian system of this and that. And just to recognize that it's just doing its job, but it's trying to work above its pay grade is very helpful. Mel.
I just wanted to ask you about imagination. Okay, so that's the mind kind of let it just wander on its own. Now, some of that input might be from, it's sometimes hard to discern what's the source. And some teachers recommend, and others don't, say it's just the mind, random thoughts, wandering around. And I don't know, do you have any?
I love that question. I love it. I'd love to hear what everybody else says. I definitely have some thoughts about it, but I want to hear what everyone else has. Jerry, good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here. Well, I don't know if it's good to be here. I need to be here. And I've never been to a Thursday thing before. I couldn't sleep last night. I just woke up. So this topic is right up my alley. So I guess I'll talk. Lately, I've been reading the book Wisdom Jesus, and it talks about this exact thing, our mind and the egoic operating system. It talks about our egoic operating system is really a grammar of perception, a way of making sense of the world by dividing the field into subject, object, inside, outside. It talks about being so binary. And a system based in duality cannot possibly perceive oneness. It can't create anything beyond itself, only more duality and more trouble. So the drama goes on and on. Melanie talked about where the mind goes into imagination. My question, and I'm going to give you an example, but my question is, I understand, it helps to hear all of this because it helps the process of the mind, the processing going around, the OCD, the mind. But I struggle with content. So the, the process, laying awake all night, the mind going round and round and round and round and round and round. The mind can't perceive, dwell, all of that kind of stuff. So the mind's doing all of that. But what about the content? Let me give you an example. And I hate to do this, but we have the time, and I guess that's what it's all about. I have a homeless 31-year-old son, hadn't seen, in and out of jail, meth addict, hadn't seen him, was going to call missing persons. Lo and behold, I was able to track him down yesterday. I went and sat with him for 2 hours in my car. Horrible state. He wasn't even there. Thin, gaunt. Nowhere to go, has nothing except his backpack, which weighs so heavy, but he won't leave it. He didn't come back with me. I watched him walk away into nowhere with nothing. So the mind, round and round and round and round. So I understand that. But the content, and that's what I think Melanie was going into a little bit. And Cindy helped because Cindy said the mind doesn't have all the information, which is a real portal, I think, for me in answering this question about, yeah, I'm pretty hip to the process and the crazy, crazy process of the mind going round and round and round. But that content, oh, that's the difficult part. That almost keeps the mind going round and round. But like I said, Cindy said, and I think that's kind of where the answer is, that the mind just does not have all the information available. So when it doesn't have all the information available, my mind left to its own devices just goes round and round and round in fear. So I don't know. Just again, the content of the mind, getting that picture up. It's almost like well, it is. It's a PTSD type of picture. So, but again, so I guess my question is, yeah, I don't know. Is that clear?
Yeah, are you asking what the purpose of the content is? Are you asking how to get rid of the content?
How to get rid of it? Yeah, yeah. Because
Okay.
in the process, and I've worked in that field of trying to tame the mind, but just, and I guess the believing that content, watching him walk away into that. That's what I mean by the content. That's trouble with.
What to do with the content,
What
whether
to
to
do with the
believe the
content,
content.
understand it or realize that it can't be understood.
Okay.
Or what Cindy said, that kind of gives me that um, direction or the answer, I guess, that the mind just doesn't have the answer to all the information to answer, to fill in the blanks, I guess,
Mhm.
is the answer. I don't know. That's why I'm throwing it out.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jerry. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to ask Cindy if she wants to address Jerry's question.
Yeah. First thing I want to say to all of us, not just to Jerry, is that from a very personal standpoint, I'm always available. Like whenever, and a lot of people here know it, when we're stuck, we need each other. When the, and if you are inspired to just sit with me in Zoom or on the phone or whatever, just reach out. I don't ever say no to that. For because a lot of times it's this pattern interrupt. So that's I just want to put that out there. Um, the second, to answer Jerry's question, is by experience, I know that the truth just is true, but that which isn't true needs to be continuously fed. And so sometimes um, the only thing we really can do, Regina calls it rest, accept, and trust. But there's real value in resting in the spaciousness, the stillness, and turning our attention away from the content and onto the truth. And there's lots of different ways to do that. And ultimately, we just rest and feel the grass beneath our feet or the breeze on our skin, or we listen to truth teachings. And there might be a part of the mind that says this isn't fixing our worldly problems, but actually, that which is not true needs to be fed, or it kind of resolves itself. And I can use Chuck and others and myself here to tell stories of how that happens. I think I have this big drama story or this big problem going on. I choose to step away, to pause, to turn my attention elsewhere. And when I turn it back, the problem resolves itself. And knowing that is wonderful. And actually, with you and your son, you know it to be true. There's a cycle going on in his story, and the separate mind wants to really focus in an imaginatory way on the horrors of the moment. But anything that's temporary does not need to be resolved. It can be surrendered. And that's where where we rest our mind comes from. Which leads me to what I was raising my hand the first time. I used to think imagination was the most wonderful thing in the world, and I was a big law of attraction fan, and let's visualize the big house. And then that fell apart, and I went through this period of time where I was like, imagination is only the experience of the I separate mind and has no value. And that is not true in my experience anymore either. Now I understand that there's a balance, and it's related to intention and attention and desire. What is my desire? And as long as my desire is on truth, the imaginative properties that are at my disposal can be used very, very, very well to open up the doors into those spaces I don't know. And so I'm playing there. So only the ego mind wants a yes, no answer to these things. I love knowing that um, there's something, like a lot of people heard my moth story this week, which I love, but it's literally a hand of God. When we provide space, the hand of God reaches down and lifts you out of the problem and places you in a different world over and over and over again. So that's what I wanted to share about this question about imagination. I don't think it is what the limited mind says it is. That's what I got, Amy, Jerry,
That's good.
everybody else.
I like that, Cindy. William and then Lonnie.
Wow. It's so good to hear these stories, like that bridge story, Cindy, or what Jerry's going through. What I see is that I use my imagination like the GPS. It's all based on past thoughts. It's like duality is what the language of the ego is, it can never be the truth of the moment of now. Now has no language, it has no past and future. It is just now. And that and that imagination is all based on past thoughts and projections. And I just see it. But what I've noticed is that I forget to breathe. And then, just like Cindy said, we're all here for each other. You'll breathe for me. In a sense, it gets my breathing back. It's like being shocked into the moment again and again. And I just see that we're not that separate. It's like I pretend I'm this separate planet and everything happens to and for me, and it's just all my imagination. I love the imagination, and yet I love that about the thorn trying to pluck itself out. I'm always trying to make myself feel better. And I just see that more and more. And wow, I can only imagine that gift of when I almost am forced to rest in the now with all the pain of seeing my son or my whatever that I've been making so important walk out of my life. And then that's the dying. I die before I die, so there is no death. So thank you all.
Thank you, William. Good afternoon, Lonnie.
Good afternoon, family. My heart is with you, Jerry. That's really all I can say. My heart is with you. The hardest thing I ever had to do was allow one of my children their own journey and to be okay with it. So my heart is with you. But I also raised my hand because it's funny because I don't always call myself this, but every other people call this of us as an artist, as a creative, as a painter and a writer and a poet. For me, imagination is that place where all the rules are gone, where all man's rules are gone, and anything can be anything, in that creation. Um, for a long time, when I had no speech, I only had to that doorway through imagination to get what I needed to say out to the world. And so I would paint it. And somehow, as the painting would occur, the truth of the words would come too. And so it became this great tool at that time. I think it has the power, or we as humans have the power to bastardize it. But for this being, imagination is that playground where there's no fence, there's no limitation, there's only possibility. And there's no right or wrong in it because it's just that, even as I talk about it, this energy like this of curiosity comes up because that's what it elicits.
Mm.
So I guess I see it maybe a little differently. I don't know. But I do know that for some time, it was a way back to connect with the world because there was no way of communicating in words directly what the experience was.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so there were all of these beautiful ways my system found to say, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what's going on, and this is what's going on,
Mm.
as an invitation in. So I guess in a way that too was imagination, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Lonnie. Before John speaks, I just wanted to say one or two things to Jerry. And I think what everyone has said, it has has truth to it and wisdom in it. Just from my own contribution would be that I sense in Jerry a real emotional attachment to the suffering of the son. And that emotional attachment may be in the form of a feeling of responsibility, of being the father. But that emotional attachment may contain some self-criticism that places the outcome of the son's journey on the father, on the caregiver. And so that ties the outcome of the son's journey to Jerry, the one called Jerry. And that is completely natural and completely understandable. And so the only thing I could say that might possibly be of use is that the son is on his own journey. The son, and you don't know what that journey is, but it intersects with Jerry, the one Jerry, even though there's only one person here, or not person, there's only one consciousness or awareness here. There's a whole self-teaching that's going on. So perhaps the one that identifies as Jerry's lesson or opportunity is to love while being detached and to allow the son to have his journey while still loving, which is a really difficult form of teaching. It's really tough. So I would say pat yourself on the back in a way, because you've chosen you and your son have both chosen to teach each other really difficult things. And that's quite a pact. And Jerry, I want to say one more thing about imagination. Because I think this is a really good one, Mel, we could ask who's imagining. So what is the story of the imagination? And you didn't really give us an example, but what is the imagining all about? And so is it the separate self that's imagining a story for itself that wants to make itself feel better? Or is it the unlimited self that's enjoying seeing its own creative ability, knowing that creation will unfold as it will unfold, but just having fun with the mental body, just imagining fun stuff? And both of those two things happen in different ways. But that's all I have to say. And I think Jerry has something to say, and then John. Jerry, do you have something to share?
My girlfriend once, I don't have any experience with psychics, but she went to a psychic a couple of years ago, explained the situation. The psychic said, I see your son as an advanced soul who has come to teach me lessons. Kind of what you just said. And so I try to look at him as an advanced soul, because I adopted him from he's got the story. So I try to stay out of that story. I go to the opposite, that he's an advanced soul that's here to teach me lessons.
Yeah.
I know what you were saying, Ann.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But at times it must be so hard to view his situation and not make the decision that somehow something's wrong with that situation. a early teacher offered the consideration at one point that when you see the bum on the street, what is the thought? Oh, what happened and all of this, but what if that is what that being came here to experience? And it really made me look at every so-called bum on the street completely differently, you know? So if I hope that is supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, The Afterlife of Johnny Fingers. I think that was a phenomenal book. John, you're going to close us out just about.
Oh, I'm going to go. I just came to mind. I was saying when you mentioned about imagination, it's just useful for me to be reminded, Amy. Imagination is a word, and it's not a thing. It's a process. It's like a verb. It's like a process. There's no you can't put imagination in a wheelbarrow. It's not a noun. So whatever we do in imagination, we're making up a lot of stuff, and it's the whole thing is all made up once we go there. But when we go back to images, and this was, I think it was William, like we're talking about these thoughts are all in the past. Images, according to what we take as the Bible, as some authority, like we're made in the image and likeness of God. That's a spontaneous image doesn't have any reference from the past. It's just an image in the presence. So, like images are really powerful stuff as centers of creation, and so it's useful to remember whatever I'm making up about somebody walking away, it is totally made up. But I remember, but where we're coming from, it comes to what Helen says. It's coming from what is your state when you come from this, and basically for me, it's useful to remember that people they're always doing the best that they can. I'm doing the best I can right now. You're doing the best you can right now. And if I could do better, I would certainly be doing better. No question about that. And the thing to remember is, especially young people, like I heard today, when we started the pandemic, especially people in school, they missed out on a lot of learning. There's a lot of putting together the socialization and stuff that they never had access to. So it goes back to what Helen was saying. I have to cut some slack for whatever's coming your way. Some compassion for the for what you've been faced with. Most of all, compassion and have for myself, for my own self-worth. Just remember that. And just identify with the values versus the fears, because I put in the chat there, fear is always a belief in separation, and you can underline always on that. We may as well figure out, if I'm closing it out, if there's one thing to remember, people do the best that they can. Whatever they're doing, they're walking away, they're coming towards you, they're going away, they're saying this, they're doing that. Like Regis is on his phone with those bananas and stuff. He's doing the best as he can, and so am I. And we're just having here for a good time, not a long time. And let's have a good time while we're here. So love us all. And I don't know if that's a closing, but it's over to you, Amy.
Thank you. We're going to be talking a little bit about imagination as a form of, or prayer as a form of imagination at 4:00. That's hearing God's answer in everyone, and we can maybe continue this conversation. But William, you are going to close us out.
I just realized that the moment I really got that my son died, I died too. I and my imagination died. And then the habits of reimagining my life and story without him took over. But there was that moment where I just joined him. It was nothing. There's nothing left. And that's, to me, what death is, or life, or the moment of now. I got it, and I sense that, and hear what Jerry's saying, walking. It's almost like I'm just viewing my own death as I view my son's no longer here. So I just so appreciative that I feel like that moment has always been a gift I saw through my imagination, opening my heart up in ways, but really there was only one moment, and that was the truth in that moment. And then I crawled back into the imagination because the imagination died too for a moment.
Thank you, William. Mel, are you going to come at 4? Okay, because I'm going to ask you what you think imagination is. Maybe we have time. I don't know if you have a thought or two. You ask the question.
Oh, yeah, I just unfortunately I lost my power right when you were talking. But you really brought to mind, questioning who is the one that is imagining it. And as we know, the mind is just thoughts passing, coming through, and it's whether we identify them or they're not. But I see the power of, and as Lonnie was talking about, I write poetry too, and you open yourself up to possibility. And I don't know if you would call that imagination, but it's kind of opening it up to whatever can arise, that open possibility. And you also remember as a kid, you all remember as a kid what fun it was to play, imagine all these different, being different. Yeah, we could create a whole new world and do all that. So I
Yeah,
see plus and minuses. So it's awareness just coming through us in incredible different ways.
So
I
is
agree.
imagination a function of the mind or of being?
Of
Yeah,
being,
that's the issue.
yeah. It's a form of playfulness, isn't it?
Can I tell a quick story?
It's up to Cindy.
Real quick. So some years ago, I have 4 boys that are unrelated. They're actors brothers, and they're at my house. I was in New York. We had a huge yard. And my rule was if the sun is out, you are too. So they had no video games, none of that kind of crap. So I'm in the house doing whatever I'm doing. And after about an hour, I've not seen them, I've not heard them. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I go outside and I stand on the deck and I'm watching them. And I have no idea what they're possibly doing, but they're moving and they're doing all kinds of things. And finally, after about 20 minutes or so, I was like, yo, what are you guys doing? And they looked at me like I was stupid. And they said, what? I said, what are you doing? And they said, we're using our imagination. And they turned from me and just kept doing whatever it was. And I was like, oh shit, that's what it looks like.
Thank you. That's really great. It is play in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And play is sacred, sacred stuff.
It
All
is.
right. Love us all. Thank you for being here. Hopefully we'll see as many of you as we can at 4. Carol, thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's a pleasure to have us all here. And thank you,
And
Cindy.
yeah, I'm going to stop the recording and then